Hello, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Armchair Athletes. We've got the original crew here with Clayton.
Terrell.
And Taylor.
Yeah, as I said, the original three. We've done many episodes like this before, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue today. Will's away this week, but let's jump right in to the NHL. And it's the playoffs right now. Taylor, it was your birthday yesterday, but a bit of an unfortunate birthday gift. Your favorite team, Montreal Canadiens, were eliminated.
Unfortunately.
I think as entertaining of a series as a 5-game series could be, because that was
I think
right.
So too.
That was right back and forth. It was awesome.
Yeah, I as much as I'm like a little sad, I think it's just the Canadiens got beat by a better team. Like, just like from line 1 to line 4, they were just better than us.
Yeah.
Especially I noticed their fourth line. Like, their fourth line is insane. And especially in the last game, in Game 5, when they got Protas back too, and putting him in the fourth line, like, they're just bigger, stronger, more physical team than us. With Tom Wilson and those guys, it was a bit tough for the Canadiens. I think we're a lot smaller, faster, younger team, but I'm still happy with the way it went. I think to get a game from them was nice. I was kind of hoping it'd go 6, because then we could go back to Montreal one more time. And I think if we played Montreal again, we might have a chance. But Logan Thompson was nasty too. So good. I don't wish on player injuries at all. I don't like to do that. But I had a bit of a tad of a sigh of relief when he got injured in Game 3. And I was like, this might be our chance to come back in the series, as much as an unfortunate injury. But obviously it wasn't that unfortunate because he came back. So it is what it is. I'm excited for the years to come, considering we shouldn't have probably even been in the playoffs in the first place. Being 30th in the league in December. Not very many teams, if not any, have done that in a recent history, coming back from that low to be able to even make a wild card spot. So I think we just need to, I was talking to my dad about this actually. He's like, if we just get a couple goal scorers and actually make the playoffs like a regular team and not have to play the best team in the league, one of the best teams in the league to start off the playoffs would be nice, so we could get our feet under us a bit more. But I think, like you said, I think it was a lot closer of a series than I think a 5-1 or 4-1 was. And Carberry said that too after I listened to his debrief interview, Capitals head coach, and he was like, I don't know about you guys, but that didn't feel like a 4-1. That felt like a 6 or 7 game series. So having a guy like Demidov, who's played literally 5 games in the NHL or 8 games in the NHL, to be 2 games under your belt going into a playoff series, it's pretty insane. Most of our team, if you look throughout the whole lineup, besides Savard, sorry, that's really loud, dump truck driving by. Besides Savard, retiring, which he had a really good career. He was basically the oldest one on our team. Rookie goalie coming in after Montevo got injured. It's a little bit stacked against us, I think, just purely based on experience. But that top line gets another playoff go at it, with Caulfield and those guys getting a chance to play a full series with actual fans in this crowd. I'm not I'm disappointed, obviously, but I'm more optimistic for the future, I think, which is I think what most people are thinking. Because if you watch, I watched the Netflix series or the Crave series. Did you watch it, Clayton? The Crave rebuild series?
I never did. No.
Okay. Well, if you watch it, Molson, I can't remember what his first name is. Jeff Molson. Yeah, he at the starting of the last year when they were going to start doing the rebuild, he was like, we got to make sure that fans know that this might not be a quick turnaround. This might be a 4 or 5 year project, and to be able to make the playoffs in the second year of the project is pretty sweet. And all those guys are just going to only get better, hopefully. And then maybe a couple more pieces get added to the lineup, and I think we definitely have a chance of making it a little deeper in the playoffs for sure.
Yeah, I certainly agree. First 2 games of the series were won by the Caps, and I thought at that point it was gonna be a little bit of a blowout. But Game 3, one of the most entertaining games of not just Montreal or Washington season, one of the most entertaining games the entire NHL season. That was when the Habs won 6-3, and there was that fight on the bench with Tom Wilson and Josh Henderson.
I think that might have been one of the most insane games I've ever seen.
I've never
Potentially.
seen something like that before. Like,
No, me neither.
that's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
The momentum swing I thought was in game 4, then back in the Capitals' favor when with that Tom Wilson hit at center
Mm-hmm.
ice on Alexander Carrier.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not people have been debating whether it was clean or not, but certainly had an effect on the series.
Mm-hmm.
Caps score right after that hit, and then they go on to score 3 more goals in that game and end up winning the game. And then, as you said yesterday, game 5, Logan Thompson was spectacular in that game after being injured in game 3. Came back in game 4 and played pretty solid, but yesterday was a beast in net for the Capitals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I think game 1 as well. Like watching game 1, he was insane in the first game. We probably could have stole that game, I think, and that would have been huge. But he stole them the game, I think. And like we've talked about before, the game 3 especially, like Canadians having 40 shots in a game is kind of an anomaly. Doesn't happen very often. And to outshoot them by 20 shots and to put 6 past, both goalies, I thought that might be the changing the game and we might come back. But like you said, the fourth game kind of was just like after that Wilson hit, which I thought it was clean. As much as like when I was first watching it, I was
did
like,
too, yeah.
that's got to be a penalty. Like he flattened him, he wasn't looking. I thought it was a headshot from the angle that they were showing on TV. I thought he hit him in the head. So I was like, okay, well, that's going to be a major. And then when you watch it after, it was the cleanest hit. So it is what it is. Carrier, honestly, that guy's a warrior. Honestly, he got injured in the first period, dodging a hit from Ovechkin, which would have been a bad hit too.
Yeah.
He went to the locker room, came back, got hit by Wilson, and he's still back for the next game. So shout out to him. Me and Zach were watching the whole series together, so obviously he was pretty happy with the whole way it went. But he was telling me though, and you can ask him about it because I know this is what he said to me. He's like, as soon as Ovi's done, I want to cheer for the Canadians. He's excited for the rebuild too. So it's kind of nice that maybe after Ovi's done, we might see a little bit of a switch. Not that he's fully given up on the Cavs, but I think he's excited to look for a new team. So there was a great matchup. Again, like next year, if it happens where we meet up with them again, I think it's going to be a different story. But yeah, all in all, I think the series as a whole helped us out as a franchise more than a lot of people think.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think you hit the nail on the head with you got to be happy if you're the Habs after this season, no matter what the playoff result was. Even just making the playoffs was huge.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess we'll switch our focus now to talk about the other Metropolitan Division series. And the Carolina Hurricanes, they're advancing as well. They'll be playing the Capitals in round 2. I think that's going to be a great matchup. A lot of animosity between those two teams from the regular season. There was a game where Jalen Chatfield from the Carolina Hurricanes, he got into a fight with Connor McMichael and kind of did like a UFC takedown move where put his leg behind. I think you know what I'm talking about here, Taylor. Where
Yeah,
he
I
put
do.
his leg behind McMichael's leg and then like slammed his head into the ice.
Yeah,
And
it was crazy. I don't know how you can get suspended for that. I've never seen that before.
yeah, I'm not entirely sure either, but did have to answer the bell against the Capitals as well the next time they played. So maybe that animosity will be gone a little bit, but I'm sure the temperatures will rise again in the second round between the two teams, as it usually does over a 7-game series.
Mm-hmm.
And Carolina, they eliminated New Jersey in 5. That was at least the result for me that I was like the most sure about at the start of the playoffs. I actually predicted it in 5-2. After the first 2 games, I thought it was going to be a sweep, honestly. Like Carolina just was dominating. New Jersey couldn't get really anything going offensively. And then the Devils come back in game 3. They get the double overtime winner from Simon Nemec, his first ever playoff goal. But the Canes would win game 4 and then game 5 in double overtime as well. Sebastian Aho ending the series in double overtime. As for the Devils, I thought Jacob Markstrom was great in that series. So far in the playoffs, leads all goalies and goals saved above expected with 5.7 in that statistical category. But for the Canes, I mean, I think it was kind of what we expected. They looked very good at the end of the regular season, and I think the real test for them is going to come in this second round against the Washington Capitals. I think that's going to be a tremendous series, as I just said. Taylor, do you have any thoughts on the Canes Devils series?
I think if you compare like both 5-1 series from the Metro Eastern Conference kind of division, I think the Canadians probably lost in a better fashion in a 5-4-1. I think the problem with the Devils is they're a bit shorthanded. No Hughes.
Yeah,
Just maybe weren't as ready for the playoffs. Again, having the injuries they had, I think is unfortunately a disadvantage for them. And Carolina's a bit of a wagon. Even after losing Rantanen, they kind of loaded up. So
yeah.
I think in the bracket, I can't remember where I picked. I think I picked them to go to the Eastern Conference Finals, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm interested to see how it goes, but I think it's good. That those two teams match up better physicality wise, I think. So I think there's gonna be a lot of big hits. I think Wilson is gonna try his best to, wreak havoc like he usually does, but I think there's a couple guys on Carolina's side that could do the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's gonna be a lot tighter series. I think it'll probably go 6 or 7 for sure. I don't see it going, 4-1.
No.
Honestly, there's certain areas where I was watching the Caps, and certain areas where I saw like where the Canadians kind of took over in the third periods. They might not have scored, but every single third period this series, I think, besides maybe game 4 where they let in a couple empty netters, but again they were pressing so hard, the Canadians were able to get and hem the Capitals back in their own zone a lot. Later on in the periods, I feel like the first couple periods for most of the series were, you know, the Capitals are outplaying us, and that's how it was. But I think if Carolina could do that same thing and probably sustain it for longer than the Canadians does, Capitals are in trouble because they have periods where they go on these long droughts where they can't get the offense going.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as much as Ovi played well, I think we're going to need to see like a different Ovi. He's got to even put even more effort in, I think, because you could
Yeah.
see some of the instances where he was maybe being a bit lazy on the back check. The one goal in game 3, when I noticed it the most, where Lane Hudson skated behind him on the boards and then backdoor passes to Caulfield for the goal. I think it was the game winning goal, if I'm not, or one of the game tying goals, whatever it was. And Ovi just was a bit lazy, so I think he needs to like step it up. But I'm excited for that series. I think that's going to be a good series for sure.
Yeah, like you said, I think you'll go 5 or 6 or 7 for sure. It's going to be entertaining. As for the other two series in the Eastern Conference, the Panthers, they advanced yesterday with a 6-3 win over the Lightning. There goes my Stanley Cup pick. Man, the Panthers right now, they're looking like a well-oiled machine, like just a
Mm-hmm.
complete team. I think they're looking like the best team in the playoffs right now. Like they are just good top to bottom. They're getting contributions all over the lineup. Eetu Luostarinen with a 4-point game yesterday to eliminate the Lightning. Like they're just getting contributions from so many guys. I have a tough time seeing anyone beat them right now.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that same boat. I was a little worried about them going into the playoffs. I think
Yeah.
a lot of people, a lot of analysts thought it was going to be the Lightning series. They didn't think that that Stanley Cup Blues could happen and they get bounced in the first round kind of thing. But like you said, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like they're one of the strongest teams in the playoffs left. Um, and yeah, I think in a physical series they beat most teams. So if I don't know how you beat them, but it'll be tough. The only thing I could see maybe helping you out is if Bobrovsky kind of tails off because he's sometimes inconsistent. But besides that, I wouldn't want to play him.
No.
That's for sure.
No.
So it'll be interesting, especially beating Tampa Bay in that fashion.
Yeah.
Um, I thought it would have like even if Florida did win, I thought it would have been 6 or 7 guaranteed. So for it to be done that quick, I was very surprised. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit of a disappointing result for the Lightning too. Obviously, I think you're going up against right at the start of the playoffs. I said whoever wins that series, I think is going to the final. But I think though for the Lightning, like they loaded up a bit at the deadline. Nikita Kucherov wasn't great in this series for the Lightning. For whatever reason, he hasn't been great in the last few playoffs for the Lightning. Has gone 15 straight playoff games without a goal. So I think that they're gonna, yeah, I just think it's a bit of a disappointing result for the Lightning. And a lot of people were picking them, but at the same time, too, like you said, Taylor, I think a lot of people were picking them because the Panthers struggled at the end of that regular season. They were a bit banged up with Matthew Tkachuk on the LTIR right before playoffs. He ended up playing great in the first round. But yeah, I think as for the Panthers, they're going to be a very tough team for whoever wins this next series that we're about to talk about between the Leafs and Sens. And Leafs currently up 3-2. Taylor and I were talking before the show here, and there's some panic, I think, starting to settle in for the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're in the Matthews, Marner, Nylander era since 2018. They're 1-13 in series clinching games. That's not a good stat. And a lot of focus and a lot of attention has been on those star players. Now, Craig Berube said yesterday that he's tired of hearing all the talk about the core four and thinks that, well, we're going to need a complete team effort to advance in this series. And I know what Berube is doing here, and I agree with why he's doing it. But at the same time, too, the reason why there's so much focus put on those star players is because they haven't performed in the big games. Like, you look over at Edmonton, they've got star players too, Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, that have yet to be crowned as champions. But you don't hear the question around Edmonton isn't, well, can their star players perform? It's around defense. It's about goaltending, which has been in the past for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but they've done what they can to fix that problem. And like, the question and the constant in all that for the Leafs is the core four not performing. Maybe this is just a test for the Mitch Marner fan club. We're sticking by our guy heading into Game 6, but I mean, they definitely they need more out of those guys in those series clinching games for sure.
Yeah, I think you again did a great, like, I think it's totally true. Like, and I think I want to say it was Spitting Chicklets, they were talking about it and how Edmonton, Ryan Whitney, obviously big Edmonton guy, and obviously Biz is the Toronto Maple Leafs lover. So it's kind of funny to hear them chat about it too. And they got in an argument the other day. I was watching their podcast and how, Ryan Whitney said the same thing that what you just said. Like, Edmonton has superstars, just as good as superstars, if not better than Toronto does. Toronto's got four of them. But if you look at the stats, Mitch Marner's never scored a goal in a game clinching series.
No.
Matthews has four. I think Tavares has got two. Like, they only got 8 goals combined between the four of them in game clinching series. So 15 games, they've got 8 goals between the four of them. Whereas, if you look at McDavid and Draisaitl, they basically carried their team out of the depths and almost came back in the Stanley Cup Finals, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it totally comes to, playing in those games, the money you're making, the 13, 14, 15 million that Matthews should be making, it's not worth it if your season comes to a halt every single year in the first round. Yeah. And I can understand if it comes to a halt in, the Eastern Conference Finals or the Stanley Cup and you just can't get over the hump. It's a little different than, showing up and having a commanding series lead against an Ottawa team that hasn't been to the playoffs since 2016 or 17 or whatever you said, who I don't find on paper like jump off the page with talent. No. But you're just getting beat by hard work again. And we've had this chat. Me and Truman have argued about this countless times about the Toronto Maple Leafs are a good team. And I don't dispute that. They're not a bad team on paper. They do great in the regular season. But when it comes to playoffs, they cannot seem to put their hard hats on and go to work.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just, they're a bit too big of divas or, that shouldn't be our job. That should be the bottom line's job to scrap it out. But again, like we were saying before the show, I think on paper, this is the best and most well-rounded setup Leafs team that they've had in a long time, from their defensive acquisitions that they made to their bottom 6 guys that they've picked up at the deadline. I don't know about you, Clayton, but they're kind of running out of excuses. I think they already ran out of excuses a couple years ago.
Oh,
and I think maybe – sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry to interrupt you there. They'll be way out of excuses if they lose this series.
I just think that obviously I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan, so I'm a bit more of a hater of the Toronto Maple Leafs, obviously. But I think it's getting to the point here where 2 or 3 years ago, the core 4, maybe not the whole core, but one of those guys should have been gone. With the whole Nylander sitting out, and all those contract negotiations, I think it would have been beneficial for them to move on maybe a little quicker than they have. I understand from a GM's perspective, you're trying to make it work. And again, I don't think Dubas should have left. I think Dubas is a great general manager. I think he did everything he could. It's not his fault. And Ryan Whitney said this as well on the podcast, saying it's the players. It has nothing to do with the coach. They've gone through so many coaches. They've gone through so many goalies. They've gone through three GMs, if you count Mike Shanahan as well. Or not Mike Shanahan. Brendan Shanahan, sorry.
Yeah.
It's not the organization's fault anymore. You can only do so much.
Yeah.
And I think it comes to the point here where if they do lose to Ottawa or the next round even quickly, you got to really reconsider your whole franchise. I know for Maple Leafs fans, they had rough go in like the early 2010, like late 2000s, early 2010s, where they were not good. But I think you got to restart if it comes to this. Like I said before the show, maybe keep a Matthews or a Nylander. Everybody else has got to be gone.
Yeah.
You can't afford to spend like over half your salary cap on those 4 guys when none of them do anything in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I certainly agree with that sentiment there. I agree with you saying that's on the players. I fully agree with that because, like you said, how many goalies are you going to go through? How many coaches? How many GMs? The one thing that I do wonder about is is it like a mental thing with this team? Because you think back to Four Nations, Mitch Marner had the tying assist and the game winning assist to win Canada that big game, the biggest game in Canada since 2010. I'm not sure. If you do let go of a Marner, does he go to another team and does he contribute there? But I definitely think that there needs to be some kind of a shakeup with this team, because just running out the core 4 again next season, it's not going to be a different result, especially if they lose this series against Ottawa. And it's not done yet. The Leafs might end up winning tonight. Who knows? They might end up throttling Ottawa on the road for all we know. But there'll be a lot of questions asked if they do end up losing this series, for sure.
I think the problem I have with Toronto is there's a top dog, maybe points wise and goal scoring wise. Like Matthews is technically their top dog, but no one takes the reins. You know what I mean? No one takes the reins. Cos Matthews got the captaincy from Tavares. Cool. There's no one in that. I swear, if I was sitting in the dressing room right during one of these games where they lost, there's no one talking. There's no one yelling. They don't have the urgency, I find, from when I watch them. Maybe they are yelling, and maybe it's just fate that they're just losing all these games. But it just seems like nobody is taking charge. And I just feel like we saw Mitch in the Canada Four Nations. He seemed more free out there. There's no pressure. It's just go out and play. He's playing with obviously the best players in the world, so he might look a little better than maybe not. But of any of the offensive teams or offensive lineups that you see in the NHL, he's got a pretty good spot. There's not very many other teams that are in a better, on paper, should be flying like Toronto Maple Leafs do. And the regular season, he does. He's a 90-point guy, 100-point guy, whatever he is. I don't know I think it would take off so much pressure if he was gone and played somewhere else. I don't know where, maybe stick him in Carolina or something like that. I don't know if they'd be able to do it, but you're playing with good players, but you're known as more of the top guy, but you just kind of play freely. There's no pressure. And I think media pressure in Toronto is one of the highest in the league as well. Especially just all of Canada. It's kind of like the Dallas Cowboys, I find, of hockey.
Yeah.
So I think it's partially pressure, partially just, no one's the guy there. They got 4 guys that are really good, but no one takes the lead and no one takes the reins.
Yeah.
As much as 70 goals or 60, whatever, how many Matthews had, 60 goals, you can only do so much. And I think he's got to be more of a captain and not as much just an offensive star. He's got to be more of a playoff captain, which is the team that they're playing. Brady Tkachuk is, I think, the perfect playoff captain. Right? Yeah. He gets his team, riled up. After the game 4 when they got their first win and they were like, we're going to be back here in Ottawa, whatever. He seems like he's got his head screwed on straight. And that's a guy that's in his first playoff series.
Yeah. No.
Whereas it seems like you look at you look at Toronto and you're watching them play and you're looking at Matthews and he's just sitting on the bench, just silent, nothing. They get
Yeah.
scored on, nothing. They're not talking. The core four is not talking. The coach is not talking. Berube's got his arms crossed. There's nothing. You don't hear any, like, there's no urgency whatsoever to try and change something. And that's what I find the most crazy. Like, if I was a Leafs fan, that's the thing that I would be the most annoyed about, is just no one is taking the steps to change. If in
Yeah.
my From a viewer standpoint.
I actually agree with everything you just said there, and I think you hit the nail on the head with that. And so we'll move on to the Western Conference. Edmonton, they have an opportunity to close out the Kings tonight for the fourth straight year in the first round after they won Game 5 3-1 in Los Angeles. The Kings, I thought, blew Games 3 and 4. Game 3 had that awful challenge from Jim Hiller on the tying goal, and then they'd lose the challenge. Evan Bouchard would go on to score quickly on in that ensuing power play to take the lead. And then Game 4, of course, they were up 3-1 in the third period. Bouchard scores to make it 3-2. Then in the final minute, Quinton Byfield had the puck on his stick in his own end with the Oilers goalie pulled, and he tried to carry it out of the zone rather than make the safe play and chip it off the boards. I think he was looking to seal the game, take it all the way down, and maybe score on the empty net. But Evan Bouchard, and you have to give credit to Bouchard on this, because he made a great play at the blue line to strip Byfield of the puck, and then the Oilers end up going on to score. It was Bouchard who had the tying goal. The Oilers then score in overtime, and they dominated that overtime, I thought. So if the LA Kings end up losing this series, I think that they're going to look back on both Hiller's mistake in Game 3 and then Byfield's mistake in Game 4. And I think those will be kind of both to blame for the Kings losing this series. Like, you could have put Edmonton on the ropes had he made the safe play in Game 4, but end up letting them back into the series on that ensuing play. I also want to make this point that at the start of the season, I said I was done with the LA Kings. Man, if they lose to Edmonton for a fourth straight time, like, I'm never picking them for another Saturday predictions for the Armchair Athletes again. I literally think that after every Kings win next year, their broadcast should literally say, yeah, the Kings won, but none of this matters because we're just going to lose to Edmonton in the playoffs. That's literally what they should literally be questioned that after every game. Like, I don't care. Because it's just kind of, they've had opportunities in the past to put away Edmonton. You think back to 2 years ago, 2023, the Kings are up 2-1. They're at home. They've got a 3-goal lead in Game 4, and they let the Oilers back into it. And the Oilers end up coming back to win that game, and then they win the next 2 games as well to win the series. Kind of mirrors what could have potentially just happened with Game 4 in this series. So, I think that and I do wonder, like, for the Kings, if they lose to Edmonton, what kind of changes are there as well? Do you consider shaking up that core? Because clearly it's not good enough yet to beat the Edmonton Oilers.
Mm-hmm. I think it was funny to me how much this series changed, because the first 2 games, Edmonton was horrible. They were
Yeah.
letting in goals like nobody's business. It was like football scores.
Yeah.
Like, just as much as Skinner, I don't see as a very good goalie. There's a couple times where he's getting hung out to dry. Like, there's a few goals that he was leading in. Yes, there's a couple soft ones he should have saved, but there's a couple points where I was like, what is he going to do? What is he supposed to do? He can't do anything. Like, there's no defense being played. And they ratcheted it up. The third game, they scored 7 goals. So, I mean, you're not going to lose. So you just outscore somebody, cool. But they still
Yeah.
let in 4. And after that, it seems like the screws tighten, and they're playing more like the Stanley Cup Finals Edmonton in the last couple games. And again, if they're playing like that with Draisaitl, McDavid, the bottom 6, a couple of defensemen that aren't the greatest defensemen, I don't think are playing a lot better than they usually are. It's a tough team too. It's not an easy team to play against. Pickard's been playing well since he's come in as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was just the shakeup they needed, and just let him go out there and play, and he's been playing well. From the Kings standpoint, it's disappointing because I don't mind the Kings. I find them an exciting team to play. I find this year more than any other year they look more convincing.
Yeah.
Going into the playoffs, every other year I'm just kind of like, they're one of those teams that's kind of like the Canadians. Like they have a decent young core. They play well enough to just make it into the playoffs, but they play the best team in the Western Conference every year, and they're out. This year,
Yeah.
it seemed like they got home ice advantage. They smacked Edmonton in the first 2 games, as well as the last regular season game for the home ice. I was like, Edmonton's in trouble here after those first 2 games, letting in that many goals. I was like, I don't see change here, and I see LA going and winning it in 5.
Yeah.
But they completely flipped the switch, turned it around. Do I see this game maybe? I could see LA maybe coming out and winning this game and maybe forcing it to game 6 or 7.
Yeah.
But or sorry, today's game 6, is it not?
Today's game 6, yeah.
Sorry, yeah. So maybe forcing a game 7 potentially, but it all depends on how quickly Edmonton starts and how well they play. And I think the odds are more in the favor of Edmonton now after they flipped the switch on this series. It just feels like LA hasn't been able to recoup their offensive firepower that they had in the first couple of games. So I'm probably sticking with Edmonton. And yeah, I think it might be a little bit disappointing. But you got a couple older guys on LA's side that are probably on their way out. Kopitar's been there forever. Doughty, those guys are going to have to be replaced eventually. So it'll be interesting to see if they just rebuild or retool and not rebuild, because they have so many good, like Quinton Byfield, I think going to be an unbelievable player. It took him a couple years to get going, but I think he's going to be nasty. Kempe played really good in the starting of this series. Turcotte's good. They have a couple good players. Brant Clark on defense is very interesting, good offensive defenseman. I don't see them having to completely shake it up like maybe the Maple Leafs do.
Yeah.
But they might need to get a couple more goal scorers, I think. They're kind of very similar to the Canadians, I find. Maybe a little bit of an older core, but a couple of good young guys, but just not a lot of playoff experience. So I would send them in the direction kind of the similar to the Canadians, where it's like just a couple more pieces of maybe guys that have been in the league for a little bit that have a little bit of playoff experience, and you might have a chance next year. I'm with you, as I'm not super convinced with them, but I'm not fully like, okay, let's just sell the whole franchise maybe as much as Toronto.
Yeah, I agree with that as well there. Now to shift over to the Vegas-Minnesota series. The last time we had this episode, the Wild had tied it at 1-1. They beat Vegas pretty easily in that game too. They then beat them pretty easily again in game 3 back at Minnesota. And I was a bit worried after that game, but game 4, Vegas responded and won in overtime. Ivan Barbashev with the OT winner in game 4. Game 5, then Vegas would win as well at home. It was Brett Howden with the overtime winner in that game. Marc-Andre Fleury ended up coming in to the goal in the third period for the Wild. I just made sure to check because I kept meaning to do this all day and then I kept forgetting. But it will be Gustafsson who will be going tonight for the Minnesota Wild in game 6 as the Wild look to even up the series. I think for Vegas, their top guys, Eichel and Stone, they weren't performing for the first 4 games of the series. They each got assists in game 4, but they weren't dominant like you're used to seeing out of those guys. And then Bruce Cassidy kind of shook up the lines a bit in that third period of game 4, and they looked better. But then game 5, you've seen Jack Eichel take over the way that you kind of expect him to in the playoffs. He was a beast in that game for the Golden Knights, got them going, got that shorthanded assist across to Carlson, and then had an assist on Mark Stone's goal as well to make it 2-1. Yeah, I think for the Golden Knights, it's obviously great to see Eichel finally get going in game 5. I don't think that they would be able to go on a deep run if he wasn't looking like typical Eichel in the playoffs, same as Mark Stone. And yeah, I really like Vegas's chances in tonight's game, but the Wild, they're not going to go away quietly either, as we've seen in this series. And in game 5 in particular, the Wild, it looked like they would take the 3-2 series lead. They had that late goal, I believe, with under a minute 30 left in the game, but it was Gus Nyquist who ended up being offside on that play, and the goal would be called back against the Wild. I think Nyquist, like, it's obviously tough for him there, but you need a little bit better awareness in that situation. Like, I don't know if you saw it. I think you saw that game.
I saw the end. I saw the end. Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't even try to stay onside on that play.
No, well, first of all, I was surprised. I was even surprised that Cassidy even would challenge it. But I guess when you're in that situation, you're going to lose the game. You have a coach to challenge. just challenge and they'll look at everything. You might as well kind of thing. Like we'll just challenge for an offside just in case, because if it does work out, which it did, yeah, I'm
I don't
undisciplined, I
think
think.
I don't think he challenges though if he knows that it's not like you have to in like you said, a minute 30 left. Like if you lose that challenge, it's game over.
Mm-hmm.
He has to 100% know in that situation that's getting called back. Like you have
Mm-hmm.
to be like as certain as possible. Like no, well, I think it could be called back. Like you have to like 100% know that's being called back.
Do you think though, at the same time, is you got a minute and 20 seconds left, and it's a goal like that that's already went to review once. They count it as a goal. Do you think obviously they're looking at the iPad and they're like, okay, well, we can't because it was like a millimeter. Like you're not seeing that with the naked eye and being like, I think there is a certain point where you might be like, okay, well, we're going to lose this game if not, so we might as well challenge it. I understand because it's close. Obviously, if it's not close at all, yeah, you're not going to challenge it. But I think what his thought process was like, maybe that he didn't see that it was offside, but it was that close that he's like, I might as well check because I can't see with my naked eye that, you know, it's a for sure thing. But I think just the situation of the game, you have to let it fly because what's the worst thing that can happen? You're gonna go on the power, you're gonna go on the penalty kill. I mean, you only got a minute left anyways. So I think he was probably gonna challenge it regardless, unless it was so blatantly onside.
I don't think he challenges if there's not that review right before for the kicking motion.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was saying as well.
I think that gave him more time to kind of look at it and be like,
Yeah.
okay, let's challenge this because, like you said, if they don't do that review and they kind of like got like 15 seconds to make a decision there,
there's no way he's figuring it out quick enough. Yeah.
No, I agree.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way he can. Even they were looking. Me and my dad were watching, and we're both looking like it's like you can barely because the camera's not that high quality. Like you could not see like the skate. I thought the skate blade was still maybe on the blue line, like literally to the millimeter. He missed. Like it wasn't like it was offside by enough that you could tell. So I think you're completely right. Like Cassidy needs the 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever it was to take a look like multiple times.
Yeah,
but it worked out for them, I guess. Yeah. Because Minnesota was getting outplayed too, I found. Like Fleury played unreal when he came in, but I think Vegas should have won that game.
Regardless. I thought Vegas dominated the first 40 minutes. The last 20, I thought the Wild were the better team, and then in overtime, it was the same Golden Knights that we saw in the first 40. Like they dominated that overtime.
Yeah, I feel like even though when Fleury came in, though, he had a lot of big saves. Like there was a point where Minnesota was stuck at like 20 shots for a little while there, and they couldn't get anything going. And then finally, they turned it around and got a couple of really good scoring hits, and then Hartman scored. I thought it was kicking motion at the start, and then ended up going off his leg. So lucky they did do a review. But if you're Minnesota, it's a tough one. But it's an interesting series. That one's closer than I thought as well. I thought it was going to be maybe a 4-1 for Vegas, just based on playoff exposure and experience. But Minnesota's put up a good fight, considering they were also struggling near the back half of the season as well.
Yeah, and then Stars, they have a chance to advance as well tonight. They're up 3-2 after a 6-2 win at home on Monday. That game was all Dallas from the beginning. Like literally Wyatt Johnston scores 9 seconds in. It's a bit of a bad goal for Blackwood, kind of goes off his back and in. But from that point on, Dallas took over. They went up 3-0. The Avs would make it close. They'd make it 3-2, but Dallas would then score 3 unanswered to win the game 6-2. And I think the big story from Game 5 was Mikko Rantanen finally showing up for the Stars. They made the big trade for him at the deadline. They gave him a bunch of money. He played all right in his time in the regular season with Dallas, but wasn't exactly the superstar that he's expected to be. And then in Game 5, the first 4 games of the series was kind of a bit of a ghost for the Stars, but Game 5, he showed up in a big way, 3 points against his former team. Wyatt Johnston with 3 points in that game as well. On the flip side of that, for the Avalanche, I think that they need more out of almost everyone on that team, with the exception of McKinnon, Logan O'Connor, who's been playing good in this series, and then Gabriel Landeskog, who I think is honestly the story of the playoffs so far. Like for him to come back after not playing a game in almost 3 years, I didn't think he'd ever come back and play in the NHL. even when he was playing in the AHL, like I kind of thought, oh, maybe he'll come back for like a game or two, but may not like be all that effective out on the ice kind of thing. But for him to come back and step into the lineup after almost a 3-year absence and be playing good and be contributing like 2 points in his first 3 games back, like that's insane. And
Mhm.
honestly, props to him. That's an incredible story.
Mhm. Yeah, I think Dallas has given a lot, all they could kind of give, I think, against the Avs. I had the Avs as my cup winner, if I'm not mistaken. So bit of a rough go for me, but I also do enjoy Dallas, and Dallas is again another team that's built really well, kind of all well rounded, good veterans that produce,
Yeah.
and then young guys like Wyatt Johnson that are playing unreal, and then Rantanen trade. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff going around. Like, is Rantanen really worth it? Is he actually the guy that he's supposed to be? Getting traded twice. But if he plays half as good as he did yesterday, that's a steal for Dallas. So, and Ottinger's been playing pretty well as well. So, maybe this will be the year that we see Dallas, make that step. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
It'll be interesting to see what happens tonight between those two teams. I have a hunch it could go to 7.
Yeah.
I think Colorado's going to win tonight at home, but never know. The Stars might end up closing it out too. Um,
Mm.
as for that other series in the Central, the Jets, they went up 3-2 last night with a 5-3 win at home against the Blues. And Mark Scheifele went down with an injury in the first while it was still tied. But the Jets still managed to take over and end up winning that game in pretty convincing fashion. The story of the series, I think, so far has been, at least through the first 4 games, I don't know if it was as much of a story yesterday. Hellebuck did make that nice save early on in the game, but he also let up a bit of a tough goal on, I believe it was can't remember if it was the second or third goal by the Blues that was a bit of a tough one for him from Snuggerud, which, by the way, elite name, Jimmy Snuggerud.
Unreal, man. Elite name.
But no, for Hellebuck, the story of this series, I think, so far has been his lackluster performance. And I wrote it down here, who could have seen this coming, because earlier in the season I did say that I didn't think he was a good playoff goalie. I'm not going to take the victory laps yet because I'm going to wait for the series to be over and for their playoff run to be over before I do that. So far for Hellebuck, he needs to be better. He really, especially if this team wants to go far, if they want to beat either the Dallas Stars or the Colorado Avalanche in round 2, because a negative 7.1 goals saved above expected so far, which is the worst in the playoffs, isn't going to cut it in the long term. However, I do think the Jets are going to win this series as of now, since that win yesterday. I originally had the Blues winning, but the Jets have outplayed them in this series. Like, it's more than just, I think, a goalie thing between the two teams. I think that the Jets are just the better team, and I think they're going to end up eliminating the Blues.
Mm-hmm. One player that I have been very surprised with on the Blues side, though, that's played really well as a veteran is Cam Fowler's been unreal for them.
Yeah, I didn't see that coming.
I think since he got traded, he's been playing really well over there. Scoring in was it his first game at the Winter Classic? Might have been one of his first games.
Yeah, one of his first.
And then since then, he's just been solid, and in the playoffs, he's been unreal. Robert Thomas too, I think, is a very good playoff guy. But yeah, I think all around Winnipeg, I think, is just better. But it's been a series though. Like, the Blues made it a series, and the Blues played really well down the stretch in the regular season. So who knows? That could go to 7. Like you said, Hellebuck's been playing not great at all. So there's still a chance. You just basically go out there and get a lot of shots on net, and some might squeak through. So there's still a chance. I don't think St. Louis is fully out of it. They still definitely have a chance.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that there. I guess just some more news in the NHL. I guess I didn't really introduce the segment there, but Rick Tocchet, he'll not be returning to the Vancouver Canucks. This team's on the verge of a disaster. It came out today that Tocchet turned down a 5-year, $25 million deal from the Canucks to return as their coach. And Quinn Hughes did not return Jim Rutherford's call after Tocchet was fired. this is looking to be very bad for the Vancouver Canucks. Looks like they're going to be on the verge of another rebuild, which you think back to a year ago, like they pushed the Edmonton Oilers to the brink in that second round series, and now a year later, it's looking like they're going to have another rebuild. It's a bit of a disaster there. The one question I have, though, for the Canucks, we're hearing all of these quotes from Jim Rutherford, their team president. Where's their general manager, Patrick Alvin, in all this? Because, like, you don't, at least, I don't know, Taylor, do you hear much from Jeff Gorton when it comes to it's Kent Hughes who does all the media and stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah. Besides the series on Crave, he's very like behind the media.
Yeah.
Jeff Molson talks a little bit, but he's the owner, so it's a little different of a relationship, I guess, with the team. But yeah, it's mostly Kent Hughes, 99% of the time, with anything serious, right?
Yeah.
It's him, and then it's St. Louis.
Yeah.
So that's how I think every other hockey team is. Canucks, I didn't even know who the general manager name was for the Canucks. Not gonna lie to you.
Yeah.
So that is totally valid because I've heard of Rutherford many times, and he's a pretty outspoken guy with issues that they have. But it's kind of wild for me that your general manager, with the job he's supposed to have, should be the one speaking on the team. Yeah, and I think that's going to bite them in the butt, unfortunately. Do I care? No, but as much as I do not like the Canucks, I do feel bad for the Quinn being the captain, young captain, trying to make this team work. He must be pissed. Like he can't be happy with the way it's going. Like you said, going from a second round, almost going to the third round of the Western Conference last year, and this year not making the playoffs. They were in the mix, I guess, a little bit, but yeah, I wouldn't want to have to deal with what they're doing, and losing Taka, who's a great coach and who's going to get hired instantly anywhere else. You could tell that he was not confident in the way the Canucks were going, which if I'm sitting there and I'm Quinn Hughes or any of the general manager or anything, any of the hockey operations staff, I'm really worried.
Yeah.
Because if the head coach doesn't want to be there, that might be because the players don't want to be there, and that could just tear your organization apart, especially if a coach gets an offer like that for an extended period of time for that kind of money and just says, you know what, nah, that doesn't look good on the players. That probably discourages the players a lot, and especially someone like Quinn Hughes is an all-world player, having, losing a couple players to the trade deadline, not having a lot of weapons left, and now losing his head coach who basically was trying to hold it all together. Along with the Miller and Pettersson, saga, and Pettersson not living up to maybe the name that he should be. I would not want to be a player on the Canucks right now. I'm not going to lie to you.
No, I wouldn't want to be either. Another great coach, Mike Sullivan. Him and the Pittsburgh Penguins had mutually agreed to part ways. He was now hired as the new Rangers head coach today. I like that fit. I think that the Rangers underperformed this year, but I don't think they should blow it up completely yet. I talked last week on the show, like they've got good pieces there. They could be back in the playoffs next season. I think Mike Sullivan's a good option to help turn that team around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good coach. Not really his fault. Aging core. Let a younger coach maybe come in and start the rebuild for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I just feel like maybe a younger, more, player-oriented coach would be a good option for the Penguins. With Crosby being in the last couple of years of his contract, after he leaves, you want someone that's ready to, work with a bunch of young guys. So, whereas New York has got some good veterans that I think just need the direction. So I think Mike Sullivan's a good pick for sure.
We'll move on to talk the NBA now, unless you guys have any final thoughts for the NHL at all.
Nope.
Alrighty. Terrell, take it away with the NBA. Unfortunately, my glorious king and Luka Doncic were eliminated yesterday by the Timberwolves.
Feels like you got to start with that game. I don't know where to start with it, though. Like, it was a fantastic game from Gobert. That was really the big thing. And I think it was that really showed that the Lakers truly did not have a center. I wrote down here, it was funny that anytime Gobert did anything for like the first half of the game, they would cut to Hayes on the bench because he wasn't out there playing. They just didn't have a center on the roster that could hang with Gobert. And then when you had Randall out there on the floor too, it was just too big for the Lakers. I haven't watched this video. There's a guy I follow on Twitter who released a video, and it was doing a film review on Luka's defense. Apparently, he was responsible for 41 of the Timberwolves' points last night, which is not ideal. So obviously the Wolves were just hunting Luka whenever he was on the floor. Rui Hachimura came out after the game. He said that they need to get someone who can get rebounds. That's fantastic analysis from Rui. Hard to disagree with that. And like you said, it's our glorious king has been eliminated. I think people are giving him a little too much grief for this series. Scoring-wise, maybe not his greatest ever. I thought he was playing fantastic defense, though, the whole series. Every time he tuned in, he was active on defense. He was at the rim. He was stopping somebody. And I thought he played quite well. It was just that the setbacks that the Lakers had when we talked about the Luka trade initially, I think we kind of swept him under the rug because, they got Luka Doncic, how bad it could possibly be. We saw how bad it could possibly be. But then on the other side of this, like we said, Gobert was fantastic. And obviously didn't have his greatest game last night, but throughout the rest of the series, he was just unreal. Randall turned it up to another level. He's been fantastic this whole series. And then Naz Reid isn't having the best playoffs overall, but in the fourth quarter of this series, he's shooting 82, 175, a 106 true shooting percentage. He just doesn't miss once the fourth quarter comes around. He's averaging, I think, 11 points in the fourth, or in the overall in the series, and 6 of them are in the fourth quarter. So he just really finds another level in that fourth quarter. He's just ridiculous. But yeah, overall, I think it was a fun series to watch. If anything, I'm excited to watch Ant keep going in the playoffs because he's electric when he's on. And yeah, this Wolves team, I think they're built really, really well to have continued success. I am excited. We'll talk about this next series here. We'll see what happens with Warriors and Rockets. We could get a Draymond Green Gobert matchup in the next round. What that's going to look like, I have no idea. Draymond's been a basketball terrorist for this past season, and I feel like if he matches up against Gobert, it's going to be like fist fight off the tip-off. It's going to be ridiculous.
Race to 10 technicals.
They might have to give some out pregame just to be safe.
Yeah,
Draymond and Rudy can each get one, and then if they get another, they're just gone immediately.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that series, depending on what happens. But the Lakers, they have a lot of issues that need to be solved, and will they get them all done in this offseason? I don't think so. They just don't have the assets to do it. But if there's any team that can attract star talent like no one else, it is the Los Angeles Lakers. So maybe there's another, GM out there with a Luka Doncic trade coming down the pipe. Who knows? But yeah, looking forward to the rest of this, whatever the Wolves can do in the rest of this playoffs. But like we said, Rockets are up next. I mean, we all picked the Warriors to win this series. Taylor, I don't know what you thought about this series before the playoffs had started, but we all picked the Warriors as underdogs as the 7 seeds. Yeah.
Yeah, so did I. Oh, that's what I would have thought. Yeah, right away.
Mm-hmm.
Rockets are kind of bipolar, I find. They either play really, really bad or really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a toss-up now, I think, just the way that they come out. And, Curry's obviously been unbelievable again this playoff so far. Jimmy Butler's look like a really, really, really good trade for them. As much as Draymond Green is who Draymond Green is, he's been playing unbelievable defense. Like that defensive stand at the end of the game 4, was it?
Yeah.
Or, against Sengun. Yeah. That's what you pay him money for. That's why he even made the NBA. So as much as the Rockets won last night, I still think it's the Golden State Warriors series. So, yeah, I think it's just a matter of just closing it out, honestly.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think it's just this Rockets defense, they can really turn it up. And if Steph isn't on his wizardry, stupid pull-up 30-footer game, he just – sometimes that just doesn't work out for him. Like last night, he only had 13 points on 32% shooting. So it's if the defense for the Rockets can pull it together like they did last night, I could see it going to 7. But you could also have game one Steph where he's hitting the, fadeaway step backs from, just under 30 feet away, and there's not much you can do, even if the defense is perfect.
Mhm.
But yeah, like you said, Draymond still plays great defense. And I want to make the comparison because I was thinking about this watching this game last night. He, in the same way that Jalen Brunson is unwatchable on offense, is the same way on defense because I know he's a good defender. I know he's like as good as anyone in the entire league. But then you'll have like a stupid tech or a dumb foul that's just like doesn't need to happen. And then he'll go and scream at the ref for like 5 seconds so someone doesn't get ejected. And I'm like, it just makes it unwatchable. Like I want to be able to appreciate how good you are on defense, but you're so annoying to watch. And then the worst thing is that afterwards he gets to go on his podcast afterwards and talk about it. That's maybe the most frustrating thing. You don't get to be free from Draymond Green after he's off the court. Yeah.
It would be nice to get Michigan State behavior, Draymond Green, where it's just it's just the gritty defensive player, who's got like the fire in the chest, and might jaw back and forth, but not with a ref. And just play good defense. I miss that Draymond Green, but it is also nice when there is the very slight chance that he's not going to yell at the ref, and it is just a defensive stand, that he is still a good basketball player on the defensive side. So, yeah, as much as he's public enemy number one to about 95% of the league, when he plays well and doesn't get himself into trouble, he's still a very elite defender for sure.
One of the best in the league for sure. It's just that is why it's so frustrating. Yeah.
I think he's potentially one of the better all-time 1-on-1 defenders in his position for sure. Just the thing that will taint his legacy is how much of an idiot he is sometimes. So, bit unfortunate, obviously, from Michigan State where he was unbelievable, to the NBA where his legacy might be just shadowed a little bit by his antics on the court.
I think so.
If you just watch him as a pure basketball player and not as the idiot he can be sometimes, he's still very, very, very elite at his age as well.
But if you guys have, do you have any other thoughts about this game?
No.
Or the series in general?
No.
I think you're kind of right. It's totally up to what type of Rockets team shows up. Yeah.
And then in that case, we can move on to the first elimination that we'll talk about, the Indianapolis Pacers eliminating the Milwaukee Bucks in 5 games. Tyrese Halliburton talked about how good he was last week, had the game winner this week, on Giannis too, which is pretty ridiculous. And then obviously, I don't know if you guys saw after the game, the whole fiasco between Giannis
I just
and
seen
Halliburton's
his dad's like not allowed to sit courtside now.
Makes a lot of sense.
Fair enough.
He like stormed the court after the game and was like just, I don't know what he was doing to Giannis, but was just
waving a blanket at him with Tyrese Halliburton's face on it or something like that.
And it was like, I mean, shout out Giannis for having the restraint because losing a playoff series and the dude's dad is immediately coming up to you and taunting you. I think I'd maybe lose it. So yeah, I guess
it's not even like it's the dude. Like if it's the dude, it's a different story. It's the dude's dad.
Yeah.
I would be like, you're the last person I want to talk to right now.
Yeah.
But so I mean, makes sense. He's no longer allowed courtside because can't let that happen again. But yeah, Halliburton was insane that game. But Gary Trent was like as good as a basketball player can possibly be in the second half. I want to say he started off 0 for 8 from 3 and then was 7 of 8 heading into overtime. He had 33 overall and was just ridiculous. And then obviously the one thing that kind of put a bit of a dimmer on everything is that he had that turnover at the end of regulation that allowed the Pacers to come back and tie it. But the big question with this series now that Indianapolis is moving on is where Giannis is going to be headed this following offseason. I have it down here. Where do you think he's going? Where do we want him to go other than Toronto? Because obviously we all want to go to Toronto. But there are some feasible options. I want to know what you guys think. Like, pipe dream, where do you want him to end up?
I haven't really thought about it too much. I don't know why, but I feel like someone like Sacramento potentially. like in dire need of like a superstar, and then if you can keep DeRozan and maybe Levine around, that could be a cool situation. I mean, it would be sick if you went to like the Spurs and you move Wemby to center and have him as the power forward. Chris Paul has 40 assists a night. And then Castle, obviously. Those are the first two that come to the top of my head. Eastern Conference.
I want to see Lakers.
I don't know if they can swing it though,
Yeah,
unless Nico Harrison becomes the GM of the Bucks.
That's what I'm saying. It's like you say you don't think you can make it happen, but again, it's like now at this point you never know.
Yeah, that would be just like, because that's the defense you need, that's the size you need,
It's
offensive
everywhere.
talent. Yeah, like that would be obviously the perfect case scenario for the Lakers. I'm hoping that that doesn't happen for the sake of the NBA, to be honest with you, because that's kind of just like if they lose after that, that's kind of like, all right, LeBron should probably just give up at that point, I think. But yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing him at a team that's maybe not a huge market, but it's just in dire need of a superstar. Obviously, the Raptors would be fantastic because we have the young core and whatever draft picks and stuff like that we could give to him to play there. But yeah, those are the first two that scream off the page for me. Is San Antonio, if they can somehow swing it, because that's a playoff team and automatically probably a deep run playoff team right off the get-go. And then Sacramento, because they're kind of in that weird limbo where it's like, do they want to blow it up and restart, or do they want to make the playoffs again and just kind of reload? I think that could be an interesting spot for them.
What about the Heat?
I've thought about it. I think the Heat are like on the verge of just imploding completely. Bam sounds like he doesn't want to be there anymore. He made it pretty clear.
But the whole Butler thing.
Yeah, everything with Jimmy. I feel like that's a franchise that's on the verge of just collapsing completely. In my mind, too. Yeah, Pat, that's what
a bit of a cancer.
when Bam was talking about the post-game press conference, he was saying it would be up to the guy with the silver hair, which obviously he's talking about Pat Riley. So, yeah.
I think he's just a little too old school for the way the NBA goes now, unfortunately. That his relationship with players is unhealthy, I think. And I don't know if Giannis is the kind of guy, like as much as he's a serious guy and, takes his work seriously, I don't know if he wants to be thrown into that situation as much as some other teams.
It's also like if you have a choice in where you're ending up, are you going to want to go there? Like probably not.
Yeah. Unless you're just a nice weather merchant, then maybe. But
maybe you've spent enough time up there in Milwaukee. You're like, I want to go be on the beach.
Yeah. But again, I think you're fine going to California or San Antonio. The weather's pretty nice down there too.
Yeah.
So, and then at least you're playing for a younger, more promising team. Whereas the Heat are going to have to change a lot of stuff, even if Giannis goes over there.
Yeah, I think this is maybe the most realistic one that I could think of. I think Houston could really make a big swing for him. They have so many like super young pieces. But the one thing I've seen a lot is that Rockets fans are like super heavily involved in this. They think they can get Giannis, and I think that makes a lot of sense. But then the same Rockets fans are like, I would trade for him, but I'm not including Amen Thompson or Şengün. And I'm like, well, you're going to have to do something. And the one analogy I saw is it was like, yeah, I would like $1 million, but I don't know if I'd give up $20 to get that $1 million. It's like, we're going to have to do something, man. Like, I get you like Amen, I get you like Şengün, but at a certain point, the Bucks have to get something back, and it's going to be one of those guys. And I do agree. I think San Antonio is definitely a big destination for him as well. It would require it's going to be a gigantic haul wherever he ends up going, which does obviously kind of scream Oklahoma City as well because they have as much to give up as anybody else.
That's another team that would just make the NBA so like.
It's like, why would you?
Who's beating them,
Yeah.
You got basically the two of the top 5 players in the NBA potentially.
I would say it wouldn't even be argued at that point.
Yeah, on the same team, plus Chet still, unless you get rid of him, which you probably don't have to because you got like 400 draft picks, J-Dub, and the other Williams. Like that's a crazy.
It'd just be ridiculous. My thing is that like if he goes out west, it's gonna be real brutal in the East for a long time because it's just kind of then it's just gonna be the Celtics and the Cavs.
Yeah.
And maybe the Magic can, pull something together. Maybe Indiana can, continue this run, but the talent is just going to be, it's going to be such a giant discrepancy between the two conferences.
Mm-hmm.
But I think now we can move on to the next series. Speaking of the East, the New York Knicks, the Detroit Pistons, the Pistons facing elimination, end up winning that game. Or sorry, coming down to the end in Game 4 is the one I want to talk about first, because Clayton, you have it down here. Tim Hardaway, there was a three-pointer, and there definitely was a lot of contact from Josh Hart, and it was not called as a foul. I don't know. Do you guys? I assume Clayton, you saw the clip too. Did you see that?
I did not see it, but yeah.
It was one of the things where it was after the game, like the NBA, whatever the ref like review thing was, came out and said there was enough contact for it to be a foul, which to me is like, I still don't really understand why they do that.
Just keep it inside. You don't need to say it.
The only thing though is that then if they didn't do that, people would then, like I see all the time in the NHL where people are like, well, the ref should have to speak to the media after the game. I think this is the closest we would get to that, is these reports.
But they don't. So they just release the statement and then it's just out in the world and then that's the end of it.
But I don't think, like, I think that's the closest thing you'd get though to like,
yeah,
like you're not going to be able to ask an official question.
But it's
never going to happen.
I get what you mean, but it does kind of just feel like it's Detroit fans are like, awesome, it should have been a foul, great, but
that was what happened with Luka in Game 4, I believe, right, where he got pushed down, and then there was the report that came out, and they were like, yeah, that should have been a foul.
It's just like, it's all you're doing is making the fan base mad.
Yeah,
because there's nothing you can do about it now, and it's not like the refs are sitting down post game for a press conference with the media. And they're going to be like, well, how would you miss that call? It's just not going to happen.
That would be hilarious, though. That would be some funny stuff.
I wouldn't be mad if that was
just toss an extra couple $100,000 to their salaries and just make them that's part of it.
They can get some media training. They'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I have to get going in a couple minutes here. So,
okay. Is there anything you want to talk about as the last? I was
going to ask, did you want to talk like Steelers draft at all, quick here?
Oh yeah, if you want to quickly. Sorry, I have an interview, so I just can't really stay for that long.
It's all good.
But I don't know if you want to jump in and then just jump back.
That's fine.
I can keep it really short and sweet. As much as I was maybe hoping. Well, I mean, I guess you guys probably talked because the draft was. Oh, the draft was after.
We haven't talked about it. Yeah, we haven't talked about it.
Okay. Well, obviously, I won't leave it for the big story, but that guy that did drop, I was kind of hoping they would take at the start. They didn't, and it ended up being okay. But I kind of was hoping that when he was falling, that we would just snag him at, 150 or whatever we were. But at the same time, I know we didn't talk about him much as one of the big prospects or a quarterback prospect. But I'm interested to see how Will Howard works out. Maybe not the most athletic or whatever, but national champion. He's got a lot of weapons, so maybe he looks a little bit better than he may actually be. But I was saying this actually to Will. We don't really have anything to lose, especially our quarterback room. That hey, if he wins the starting job, I'm not angry because that means we don't have to go for Rodgers, hopefully, and we can just kind of bury that, and he can just kind of retire.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad we got a quarterback. Was it a little late? Could we have maybe gotten someone else? Probably, but at the same time, we did make some good moves. Johnson in the 3rd or 4th round, I'm excited for. The running back from Iowa. He looks like he could be a little bit of a snag that late. So our running back room is fixed. I can't even remember. Oh, Jack Sawyer is kind of another one that's like could be sick or could be horrible. We don't know. Again, he's going onto a defensive line that's pretty elite, so I don't really see him maybe making as much impact in his first year. But who knows on that right side or left side, if they shuffle things, that he might end up being a decent player. I can't even remember who else we drafted. It's been pretty bad. Our first draft pick was who was our first draft pick?
Derek Harmon.
Derek Harmon. Again, D tackle, learning from Cam Hayward. If he turns out half as good as Cam Hayward, that's a dub.
Mm-hmm.
So, overall, I'm not angry with the draft. Maybe a bit of a better quarterback would have been nice. But again, At this point, it's either we just are bad and then we tank for a man Arch next year or one of the good quarterbacks next year, or Will Howard turns out to be like Ben Roethlisberger 2.0, and we're laughing at the 180th pick. So, not angry. Good running back selection. Good, interesting quarterback selection. Good defensive tackle. For the most part, I'm pretty happy with how the draft went. I mean, I would love to hear what your guys' thoughts on the Seattle thing is, but I actually have to leave, so I will just listen to the episode after you're done.
Okay.
Sorry I have to go, but thanks for chatting. I will talk to you guys next week. So,
alrighty. See you later, Taylor.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Au revoir.
Okay. We will then switch right back to the NBA. I don't really know. I mean, I said it here. That foul call, it was horrible in the moment. It should have been called. And it's such a disappointing finale to that game because it was a really, really good game. But at the same time, I'm just happy that this series is continuing because I think this has been really entertaining. I hope it continues. I hope we get a Game 7 out of it. We'll see tonight. But yeah, I don't know. Have you been watching these games, or are you just kind of following as they come along afterwards?
Yeah, kind of just as they come along afterwards. Like I seen that foul on Tim Hardaway, and kind of the discourse around that. And I seen, of course, we're about to talk about it here, but the Jamal Murray game against the Clippers. But been mostly paying attention to the NHL playoffs. I think I'll probably be more dialed in for the NBA as it goes on because there's 8 series to kind of follow in the NHL right now.
It's like you have to kind of pick one or the other. You can't be fully tuned into both. Yeah, I get it.
Then I've been paying attention to baseball a bit too. So.
Yeah. But yeah, like you said, you talked about Jamal Murray and the Clippers. We got our scheduled Jamal Murray playoff performance. There's at least one every year. It was going to happen. And it was exactly what the Nuggets needed, man. Jokic didn't have his best game, but Murray just came in and filled those shoes. And we talked a lot about Kawhi Leonard after that Game 2 performance because you were coming fresh off of it last week for the show, where he dropped 39 on 70% shooting or whatever it was. But since then, he's been relatively quiet in comparison. Just hasn't had a game that's lived up to that level or even close to it, really. And we were kind of feeling low on the Nuggets, like it was going to have to take Jokic, Superman series to get them out of this. But now with that Murray game, with Kawhi kind of tailing off, it feels like the Nuggets really have the upper hand here. I don't know. How are you feeling about this series heading into Game 7 tonight? Or Game 6 tonight, sorry.
Yeah, I feel like the Nuggets have kind of taken over a little bit. I think they're going to close it out tonight.
I mean, for the sake of my bracket, I hope so. And I like the more I can see Jokic in the playoffs, the better. I like watching him out there. So I would not be mad about that at all. I also, again, I do think it's funny that we get the Jamal Murray playoff merchant, good team merchant. The lights were as bright as he had hoped. In the regular season, the lights were dimmer than he wanted them to be. It's funny that this happens every year.
I do have a question for you. What do you think of if the Nuggets do eliminate the Clippers? What do you think of their chances against OKC, especially if Jamal Murray's performing?
If we're getting Jamal Murray like we were, it would also require like the nuclear Jokic performance, I think, to get them over OKC. I think that like SGA had a slow series, especially by his standards. But in that closeout game, he was ridiculous. He put up 38. Like that's the SGA that we're used to seeing. And at the same time, Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren have both been fantastic for them. I just think that this OKC team is so well-rounded and they have so much depth, and it's the exact opposite of what the Nuggets have, that I don't think the Nuggets can overcome it. But if we end up getting playoff Jamal Murray and the regular Nikola Jokic that we're used to seeing, I could see it being an actual series and being very entertaining. But overall, I mean, I'm just kind of excited to see like the Jokic versus Hartenstein and Holmgren battle because that'll be entertaining. I don't know. I do think it still will end up being OKC probably in 5 or 6. I just think that the talent deficit, once you get outside the top guy on each team, is pretty insane. But speaking of, the Thunder swept the Grizzlies. Not surprising, especially after that first couple of games in that series. I think they said it was the 2 biggest point deficits in playoff history.
Yeah.
It was like 75 or 76 points between the 2 games. It was just ridiculous. You had something to say.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you think this is a different series with a healthy Ja Morant?
I think to an extent, yes. What does that mean? Memphis would end up winning? I don't think so.
No.
But, they were up when he went out, and then obviously OKC made that crazy comeback. So, I think people were clowning him because he said, I had started to figure out OKC, and then obviously they ended up getting swept anyways. But I do think that he would maybe have extended it an extra game or 2 if he had remained in, especially if all that meant was them just clinging on to that lead that they ended up choking against OKC. But overall, I do think it still would have ended up being over in, maybe 5 games instead. But yeah, this Grizzlies team, hopefully they can remain healthy. I think Jaren Jackson Jr. is still fun to watch. I like Desmond Bane a lot. They have a lot of interesting young guys. But like we said, it's a 1 versus 8 seed. It's one of the best 1 seeds you've ever seen in OKC.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can do as Memphis. And then speaking of 1 seed sweeping 8 seeds, the Cavs also swept the Heat. We talked about, Bam wanting out, the different problems that they've had. They got blown out. I think it ended up being 53 points they lost by in that final game.
Yeah.
They just got demolished by the Cavs. And it's kind of what we expected. Like we said, 1 versus 8 seed, there really isn't too much to talk about there. It was just such an immense talent deficit that there's only so much you can do if you're the Miami Heat. And for the Cavs, that's what you have to do when you're playing a worse team. You have to look that dominant. If it was maybe a little closer, there'd be more to talk about here, but it was just a better team beating a worse team, and that's as simple as it gets. And then with the Celtics, end up winning that series in 5. So a little more interesting at the very least, albeit that is mostly because there were injuries to 2 of the Jays for each of the games there. Magic were able to steal 1, and then the Celtics ended up closing it out. And Tatum was fantastic in this series. So, again, not too much to talk about there. Better team beating a worse team. Not super exciting. We already talked about this briefly with the Nuggets. You think that the series will be closed out tonight. I'm going to have to agree. So then the other series that is happening tonight, Game 6, Knicks-Pistons.
I want to see that go to 7.
I do too. I want to see it so badly. These 2 teams, they clearly don't like each other. It's very enjoyable to watch. Like we've already mentioned a lot, Brunson is not my favorite player to watch offensively. There was a moment in the game where after Brunson got called for a foul, I believe it was Jalen Duren was on camera mouthing. He said,
I read that as Jaren Duran, and I'm like,
of the Boston Red Sox.
Basketball for you.
I mixed them up. I was thinking about it too. I was like, because it's Jalen Duren, and then I was thinking Jalen Duran, and I was like, I just mix them up. But yeah, he called him these would be words we couldn't say if we were still on MRU, but now we can say. We called him a flopping ass motherfucker in the camera, and I thought that was hilarious because hey, he's not wrong. But yeah, I think it's been a fun series to watch, and I hope the Pistons can pull it out because it's been electric. But we have our MVPs here. I filled these out. You have all the series down. For a lot of them, I don't think there's too much arguing to be made, especially for the series that are already over. But there are some teams where there's just hasn't ever been one big standout guy, which is kind of what we talked about last week as well.
Yeah.
And starting that off is the Cavs and the Heat. The Cavs didn't really have one super standout solid player. Every guy kind of had their game. Jared Allen was fantastic. Mobley's had some good games. Mitchell's had some good games. Yeah. So there's been lots of great individual performances in each game, but no like super standout guys overall. So I just took Darius Garland. I think the biggest argument against him would be that he's a bit of a liability defensively, but he's so good offensively that I think it ends up making up for it. But I think you could argue pretty much anyone on this Cavs team, and I wouldn't be opposed to the answer that you gave. And then for Pistons Knicks, so far, I think it would have to be Brunson. The Knicks are still up. Brunson's averaging almost 30. Even if he is getting it through unethical hoops, whatever, he's still scoring a lot. He's still putting up good efficiency. It is what it is. For Pacers Bucks, since the Pacers won, I have a hard time picking someone from the Bucks. So I think it has to be Halliburton for the Pacers. We mentioned how important he was on the last episode, how instrumental he is in running this offense. But I mean, losing teams have had MVPs picked from their team before. Jerry West won a Finals MVP as a loser, and I think in that case you could give it to Giannis, and he is definitely the one individual standout performer from this series. Celtics Magic, it's Jason Tatum. I think he's averaging just over 31 a game. There's not really much of an argument to be made there. And now over in the West, Clippers Nuggets, I do think here it is Jokic. Like we said, Kawhi has had a bit of a fall off since his standout Game 2 performance, and Jokic is still averaging a triple-double throughout the playoffs, despite only putting up, I think, 13 points in his last game. So it's Jokic here. Rockets Warriors, I do still think this one is Steph. This is another series where there isn't like one super standout guy, at least in terms of overall performance. I think Steph's leading in point per game by a little bit, but just not by a whole lot. And that's even after he put up his stinker last night of 13 points. For Thunder Grizzlies, I think it has to be either J-Dub or Chet, and I'm leaning Chet. He's got better efficiency and is obviously putting up better numbers defensively because he's big, and that's kind of just how that works. But I could see the argument for J-Dub, but I can even see it for SGA if you think the closeout game was enough to make that decision for you. And then for Lakers Wolves, I think it has to be Anthony Edwards, even though he didn't put up his best performance in the last game.
I was going to say Gobert was good in that.
And that's the other thing I had there. Gobert, kind of the inverse, didn't have the best performances games 1 through 4, but then game 5 was just ridiculous and really put the exclamation point on that series. So I think either answer there is acceptable, but overall for the entirety of the series, I do think it has to be Anthony Edwards. And unless you have anything else you want to talk about, I think we can move on to the NFL.
Yeah, had the draft occur last week, and Taylor talked a bit about the Steelers draft. I couldn't be much happier as a Seahawks fan how that draft went. We've been harping on it now for a while. We sound like broken records. They needed a guard. They got it in Gray Zabel in the first round. He was going to crack open some Busch Lights to celebrate. That's the kind of guy I want in my offensive line.
Exactly. I was also really happy with this. If you can't tell by my name here on the screen, if you're watching it on YouTube, if you're listening to it on Spotify, my name is John Schneider's biggest fan.
I think, is that the Blue Jays, John Schneider?
Oh, my bad. I always mix the two of them up. But regardless, the point still stands. The draft was fantastic, and it's not even us being biased. A lot of big sports publications agree that Seattle had one of, if not the best draft this year. I had it bookmarked, just some of the different ones. Fox had it as the best, ESPN has it as the second best, and The Athletic has it as the third best. So I was very excited with it. I love the Gray Zabel pick. Obviously, that's who we took in our mock last week. So we do know ball sometimes. It can be confirmed.
You guys nailed the first 7 picks of the draft.
It was. I was pretty excited about that. And I remember in the group chat I said I think 8 is where it all kind of falls apart, and then that's what ended up happening. But yeah, I was stoked for the Gray Zabel pick because I had seen so many people mock him to Seattle, but with the caveat of, but Seattle never drafts guards this high, or interior offensive linemen this high. It just doesn't happen. So look for them to do something else. And then they ended up doing it. So we love that. They're listening to the angry fans on social media. They finally tapped in.
John Schneider had said before the draft that he'll have people come up to him. He said it on some radio show. He'll have people come up to him in like a restaurant or something. They'll be like, "Hey man, you need to get a guard. You need to fix the offensive line." And he's like, "I know."
That's the funny thing is it's like I'm sure as an NFL GM, you're there for a reason. You're not like just stupid.
Yeah.
And sometimes the moves just don't come around. but it felt like they had just whiffed so many times. And now, like, it had fallen into their lap. He was like the perfect guy. He's, played all 5 positions of the offensive line. He can be both guards. He can slide into center. He can play tackle if you need him to. It was like, this is perfect. It's exactly what it has to be. And it almost felt like it was so obvious that should be their pick that it wouldn't happen. But then it ended up happening. So not much to complain about there. I remember the pick happened in the group chat. Immediately they did the pick, and then they showed him like out in a field, like on a tractor. And I was like, we're establishing the offensive line right there. That's what we need. So I was stoked about that. You have down that you are excited about the Nick Emanwari pick. So I'll let you talk about him first, and then I'll talk about him afterwards.
Yeah, and I didn't really do as much scouting pre-draft as you did, but more so, I guess, kind of after they drafted him, hearing kind of what kind of player he can be. And of course, you hear the player comparisons. I always love those where they compare him to like some all-time great, and they place these massive expectations on him. Of course, the one that he's being compared to is Cam Chancellor, so I like that. But I don't expect him to be Cam Chancellor. I think that's unreasonable, especially like last year when they drafted Byron Murphy, and everyone's like, "We've got our Aaron Donald." It's like, maybe
you can't do that, man.
Expecting that out of him right out of the gate. But no, I mean, I think that I like the pick because I think that they've got a very good safety in Julian Love. They've got another good one in Kobe Bryant. It was a need as well with the departure of Rayshawn Jenkins. So I think they fill that need here. And I don't think he's going to be like heavily relied upon out of the gate here. So I think it will give him some opportunity to develop into that role.
Like I said in the pre-draft when we were talking about it last week, I wasn't the biggest fan of him. I think he has some limitations, but I think part of that is I expected him to be taken in the first round, and I thought if it was going to be at 18, I thought that was maybe a little rich for Seattle, and I wouldn't have liked it there. But like some of the other picks that we're going to be talking about for Seattle, I like it a lot more at the start of the second round, even though you did have to trade up for him. It was picks that, I think it was the ones we got from the Geno trade and the DK trade that ended up getting moved. So overall, it's not the end of the world that they traded up to get him. Obviously, Mike Macdonald likes him a lot if they're giving up draft capital to go and get him. And like I said here, if there's any coach I trust to develop this guy, it's Mike Macdonald. And I do think that the athletic tools, they just can't be denied. He's the most athletic safety you've ever seen coming out of the combine. My concerns are just that some of the things he isn't good at will be big things for him to work on. Like, I think the coverage is not the best. His hips maybe aren't the most fluid thing in the world. His footwork isn't the greatest. But again, if you're Mike Macdonald and you see this guy and you think I can coach him up, then this will be a fantastic pick and it'll look like one of the steals of the draft for sure. And then continuing on, I just got to pull up all the picks that they made.
They did draft that tight end in the second round as well.
Yeah, and I was a big fan of him, Elijah Arroyo. I really liked him coming into the draft. He was a guy, I think 50 was maybe a little much, but again, when you trade away your other the 52 pick, you kind of got to take the guys when they get there. And I think by the time 92 came around, he would have already been off the board. So I get it. And I like him a lot. He's not going to be a blocker. He's not going to, be lined up on the line of scrimmage or in the backfield or anything. He's going to be out wide or, up on the line of scrimmage, but just kind of offset a little bit. He's going to try and fill that Noah Fant role and hopefully do it better than Noah Fant did. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
If we should be having higher expectations for him than that, I would think. But I really like it. I think he'll take some of the heat off of JSN and Cup out of the slot. And he's a fantastic receiving tight end. There's some injury concerns there, but you'll see that's kind of a theme with some of the guys that Seattle took. They're willing to, take that risk and bet on a guy that maybe would have went higher if it weren't for that. And again, I think it's a position of need, even though tight end maybe wasn't the most pressing thing that they needed. I think it was definitely up there. Like, if Fant is going to be gone, if the tight end room then becomes Barner and Arroyo as your top two, I think you're looking you're at least are more optimistic heading forward than you were with just Phantom Barner. But speaking of athletes that you took and are looking to develop, at pick 92, they took Jalen Milroe out of Alabama.
I wasn't expecting that.
No, I really wasn't. I was kind of hoping maybe that they would take a guy that they could look to develop because, this Sam Darnold deal, it's going to be over sooner than you think. And they need somebody to fill those shoes. And as we've learned since then, Sam Howell is not going to be that guy.
Drew Lock probably won't be that guy.
Drew Lock likely won't be. He'll definitely be the backup for sure. But with Milroe, this is I think it's kind of the same thing with McDonald thinking he can develop Emmanwori. It's this guy is an absurd athlete, one of the best at his position in the entire draft, and one of the best. Shouldn't say ever, but he's a next level athlete at the quarterback spot. And he has a lot of stuff to clean up. Obviously, he went into the third round. But if you can get the accuracy under control, even a little bit, his value as a runner is going to be so insane that I think even if he could never throw a pass his first year. If he comes in, goal line or short yardage situation as quarterback and they just let him run the ball, that'll be perfect for him. And then, just let him develop as a passer as this Sam Darnold deal runs out. But I really like this pick. This is another one like Emmanwori, where if it had happened at pick 50 or pick 52, I wouldn't have been as much of a fan of it. But at 92, you're taking a big swing on a crazy athlete. I'm totally fine with that. And then as we
rather, just because I guess it's kind of like an obvious question here, would you have rather taken Shedeur Sanders there instead of Jalen Milroe?
I would say no. And part of the reason is, honestly, if it had been...
Sorry, I just got to plug in my laptop, so sorry.
I was going to say, even with how far Shedeur fell, Taylor talked about hoping the Steelers would snag him with any other picks out of the first round. Initially, when he started to fall, I was like, this is teams being dumb. Why are they letting this guy fall? But then as he continued to slip further and further and further, and teams passed on him multiple times, it became less of what are the teams doing wrong and more of what did Shedeur do wrong to make this happen. I don't think it was like teams are looking to just blackball him, although it is kind of insane that Dylan Gabriel ended up going before him. The Giants traded up to get Jackson Dart, overtaking Shedeur. I think that ultimately, it's character concerns with him. Throughout the season, he was throwing teammates under the bus. He was throwing former teammates under the bus.
I was able to make it. Ran upstairs in almost record time, grabbed my charger.
Beautiful. So just talking about Shedeur, I think it's character concerns more than anything else. I think the big thing is that when he initially started to slip, I thought that there were teams making mistakes in the drafting process. Like I said with the Steelers, I thought they would get him at 21. But as he continued to fall, it became less of a question of what are teams doing wrong and more of what did Shedeur do wrong that so many teams are passing on him consecutively. And ultimately, with Jalen Milroe, the athletic tools are so much more impressive than Shedeur. Shedeur is maybe an average level athlete, and Jalen Milroe will immediately be one of the best at the quarterback position the second he steps into the league. So with Shedeur, I think maybe the floor could be higher. But ultimately, I think if you believe he can develop Jalen Milroe and he does develop in the way you think, you will not be second-guessing this pick whatsoever. And then I'm just trying to think, we're getting into day 3 picks here. So I'll just read through them, and then I'll say the ones that I like the most out of all of them. 142, they took Riley Mills, a defensive tackle. 166, they took Torrey Horton, a receiver. 175, they took Robbie, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Oosts. He's listed as tight end, but he's a fullback. 192, they took Bryce Cabledew. He's a guard. 223, they took running back Damian Martinez. 234, they took tackle guard Mason Richmond. And then 238, their final pick, they took rookie White III, receiver. the three that I want to highlight here that I like the most out of all of them are definitely going to be Torrey Horton, the receiver from Colorado State at 166, Damian Martinez, running back at 223, and then Ricky White at 238. Torrey Horton is a guy that I think he's coming off a major injury, kind of had a down year last year, but his tape and numbers in 2022 and 2023 were much, much better. And I think if he hadn't had that injury, he would have been like maybe a second to third round guy instead of a fifth round guy. I think they're going to get an immediate playmaker out of him, even if it is only on special teams. Damian Martinez, I was shocked that he fell as far as he did. I think if this wasn't as good of a running back class as it was, he probably would have went third or fourth round, and instead he ends up going in round 7. And for Seattle, I mean, we make the joke, John Schneider's going to take his running back every year. At the very least, it wasn't in the second round this year. They did some other stuff first, and then way down the board, they took a running back.
That was for good behavior. He was allowed to take
I was going to say, as a reward, you took an interior lineman, you can take one running back for free. But I really like this guy. I like him a lot. He is, step one, if you're a late run running back into getting playing time in the NFL, be good at pass blocking. He can do that. You're going to see the field if you can do that. This has also kind of sparked some rumors that maybe one of the running backs in Seattle is going to be on the move. And the speculation there is that out of anyone, it will be Kenneth Walker. So we'll see what happens there. I think those are just rumors at this point, just because the running back room is kind of getting a little crowded now. But regardless, I do think that Damian Martinez will be a bit of a steal for Seattle out of the 7th round. Then the last guy, again, Ricky White III from UNLV. I really like him. I think, again, he's going to make an immediate impact on special teams, if nothing else. And he had great production at UNLV. He was fantastic. So, yeah, I'm a big, big fan of this draft class, and I'm really looking forward to it. Most of the time, going into the draft for Seattle, I'm very excited. Coming out of it, I feel worse. And going into this one, I was kind of, middle of the road, and coming out of it, I feel very excited. So, looking forward to see what these guys can do going into the season. And yeah, I was just stoked about this draft class.
I also think Seattle's better than their current win projection. I don't know if you saw that.
I did.
They're projected to finish last in the NFC West.
Mm-hmm.
I disagree with that. They were projected to not be great last year. They outperformed it. They got 10 wins. They're the only team since the playoff format's been expanded that didn't make the playoffs with 10 wins.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've gotten better with these off-season additions. They've upgraded the offensive line, which was the major issue.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna at least finish second in the division. I get that San Francisco kept a lot of their core pieces. I don't think they're gonna be as good next year as the thing is they do have like a weaker schedule, but I just don't think they're gonna finish ahead of the Rams. And right now I'd lean Seattle.
Mm-hmm. I think this division is going to be super hard to predict because, San Francisco obviously had some pretty bad regression last year, and they had some bad injury luck. But then they lost a lot of key pieces in the offseason. So we'll just have to see what happens there. Receivers going to be a little thin for them. Who knows what's going to happen with Purdy? The defense has lost a lot of key pieces.
Who knows what's going to happen with McCaffrey?
McCaffrey too, yeah. Ufanga and Dre Greenlaw, huge losses. So it's but then again, it could be as simple as, well, they're San Francisco, they're always good. They do have Christian McCaffrey. If their ceiling is what happens, they could be, an 11-12 win team, and then they could just as easily be the first or second seed, and Seattle could be third. My big thing is that last year, they were projected to win 7.5 games. Seattle was. And then this year, the projection is the same. And I think that's kind of ridiculous. I think I don't know what the reason why it hasn't increased is.
Maybe it's just because everybody, maybe it's a competitive division thing.
Maybe.
But this team's way better than they were last offseason.
It definitely looks like it, at least going in on paper. And I even, as a big Geno Smith guy saying this, I would say that would arguably be the biggest difference between two teams is obviously going from Geno to Sam Darnold. I just don't think the markets or whoever's setting these lines for win totals agrees with me that Geno is going to be, or Sam Darnold and Geno are going to end up having the same level of wins in them. But I think outside of that, the team has gotten better, even with the loss of DK Metcalf. So I think that the 7.5 win is quite low, especially considering that's what they were set at last year as well. And then obviously, like you said, won 10 games. But I'm excited for this season coming up. Actually, one last thing. Undrafted free agent signing Jackson Woodard from UNLV, the linebacker. I really, really like that. They need another linebacker, I think. Ernest Jones was fantastic for them, but if they could have another guy that could cover out of that spot, that would be ideal. And Jackson Woodard looked like he could be that guy. So looking forward to what he can do. And then obviously he gets to reunite with Ricky White, his teammate at UNLV. So that's exciting. But yeah, do we have any other thoughts on the Seahawks?
No.
Okay, well, maybe talk about, I'd say arguably the next biggest story on draft night was the trade. Cleveland traded with Jacksonville. Jacksonville moved up to select Travis Hunter, second overall. Cleveland moved down to 5 to take Mason Graham. Least surprising thing, Cam Ward went first overall. We kind of expected that to happen. We talked about the things he was saying playing Fortnite. Calvin Ridley's the best receiver in the league. Tyjae Spears, Tony Pollard, one of the best running back duos. It was pretty obvious that's what was going to happen, so it wasn't that surprising when he ended up going first. But yeah, Travis Hunter to Jacksonville, very, very excited about that. Even if I think it was a lot to give up to move up that high, but at the same time, if Travis Hunter pans out like you expect him to, you make that move without a second thought. So I'm very excited about that. And then I think we have to talk the next couple of picks here just because top 5, and then we have Will's Patriots selecting here. Abdul Carter went to the Giants. I think that was the easiest pick for them. Obviously, if Shedeur wasn't going to be on top of their board, which clearly he was not, then Abdul Carter makes the most sense. That defensive line is going to be ridiculous next year. I'm looking forward to watching them play. And then, like you mentioned, Will Campbell to the New England Patriots. Drake May got his tackle. Will can sleep happily. He can be content knowing that his goat is going to be sleeping soundly in the pocket. So that's exciting for them. And then maybe I'll just say my favorite pick in the first round, outside of obviously Gray Zabel to Seattle, because he's going to be an all-pro. There's no way he's not. I'll say that I really like Ted McMillan to the Panthers. They just loaded up that offense as much as they possibly could, and I think that's the correct thing to do when you have a quarterback where you need to see if they can prove themselves or not. And with the tear that Bryce went on at the end of last year, I think it makes a lot of sense to look at that and say, let's build up around him and let's make sure that that wasn't a fluke. This is our guy. And then once we know that for sure, then we can worry about everything else. Either, he doesn't continue to perform at that level and we can immediately try and find the next quarterback, or he does, and then we can worry about the rest of the team. Yeah. And I think outside of Travis Hunter, Ted McMillan was the best receiver in this class. And I think it made a lot of sense for them to take him at number 8. And then, unfortunately, I do think that the Eagles got a steal at the back end of the first round in Jihad Campbell. I think he's the best linebacker by far. And I was kind of hoping it was a guy that Seattle would be looking at 18. I don't think that they thought that linebacker would be the biggest need. But for Philadelphia, he's going to be ridiculous for them. He's playing next to Zach Bond. He's going to produce immediately. I'd be shocked if he doesn't. And it feels like a bad omen when you're winning the Super Bowl and then trading up one pick with the team you beat the Super Bowl to get a guy. It's like, do you like him that much? And I guess they do. So I can see why Philly wanted to take him, and I think he's going to be unreal for them. So, yeah, that's, I think, my 2 other favorite picks in the first round outside of Gray Zabel to Seattle. Do you have any other thoughts on the draft?
No. Unfortunate that prank call that Shedeur had to endure.
it was like that whole situation. Did you see
And
that
then,
they?
well, I was going to say it was crazy. Then all of a sudden, the guy that orchestrated it was the Falcons' defensive coordinator's son.
Mm-hmm. It was. I remember seeing like just speculation because apparently he was in the video that was posted. He was the kid in the background, and I was like, okay, like yeah, maybe. And then things kept coming out, and I was like, oh, it really might be. And then the Falcons released a statement, and I was like, oh my god. And then the Falcons ended up getting fined, I think, $250,000, and the defensive coordinator got fined $100,000. So I mean, there really isn't much to say. Apparently, the kid just they had the iPad out that had the contact information of draft prospects. It's like maybe keep the password on that one, um, or shut it off when you set it down. But also, if you're this guy's kid, I mean, I think you're maybe looking to find your own way through college now in the States. I don't know if dad's gonna be paying the tuition after you made him pay $100,000 and made his team lose $250,000.
Yeah.
But apparently there was more calls made, um, as a rumor. I don't know if it's the same guy or not, but one would assume that the guy or whoever leaked the number for Shadur had numbers for everyone else as well. I think Tyler Warren said he got a call, who's the tight end that the Colts selected. Um, there were a couple other guys as well. So just kind of ridiculous.
Do you think that this will be a change where maybe they, instead of calling a player before he gets drafted, they draft the player? That's kind of like the shock moment, and then they call him after.
I saw that as like a potential solution. I think really like this has happened one time in forever. Um, I think it's probably just going to end up remaining the same. I think the draft calls, maybe to me, I just like them too much. I like when you get to see the GM call a guy and find out that he's getting taken there. But I would, if they ended up changing it, that they call him afterwards. I don't think it would make that much of a difference. And if it meant that one less player every year would have to go through the prank call thing, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. It wouldn't make that much of a difference to me. Um, but is there anything else you want to talk about with the NFL?
Nope.
Then I think we can move on to the MLB. We'll start with the rest of the league, and then we'll move on to Toronto at the end.
Mike Trout got hurt.
I think I talked about it too much. He was having a solid start. I said he was having like a Joey
You were going to
Gallo.
mention the injury just in case, and then ends
I
up.
didn't say anything, and then it ended up happening anyways. So maybe it's not a jinx.
Maybe we just won't talk about him at all anymore.
We might have to. But he like I had mentioned that he was on like a Joey Gallo type run where he was hitting. He's below 200 on the season, but he also has like I think 8 or 9 home runs on the year. So hitting for power and nothing else. It was an interesting stretch, but obviously, hopefully he comes back healthy because he's fun to watch when he's in there. But staying in the AL West, the Mariners, they've been cooking, man. You have it written down here. 7 straight series and a 14-0 win against the Marlins last Saturday. And Jorge Polanco, he's been great. Looking like obviously the AL MVP is Aaron Judge. But if it weren't for Aaron Judge, Jorge Polanco would definitely be up there. He's got, I think, a 1243 OPS to start the year. He's been absurd for them. So, and I have it down here, 6th best team OPS in the entire league, which is hilarious for a team that a lot of people, myself included, that would be carried by the pitching and the offense would be holding them down.
That was the case last year where they got like great pitching and then just the offense was kind of the reason they didn't make it to the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. And so far, been not the opposite, but pitching's been slightly worse than expected, and the offense has been as good as anyone could have possibly hoped. Yeah. So I hope they keep it together because I really like this Mariners team. And yeah, if the pitching can return to last year's form, they're going to be one of the best teams in the American League, if not all of baseball. And then you have these next couple of points written down, so I'll let you go through these ones.
Yeah, Cubs, they've gotten off to a great start this season and currently lead the MLB in most runs per game in the entire league. Terrell, you had predicted at the start of the year that they would win the division. And so far, they're looking pretty good right now in the NL.
I mean, I think it'd be kind of hard for them not to. At least that was my thoughts when I was choosing the winners at the start of the year. The NL Central is a little iffy. I think the Brewers and the Reds could make a run at it, but the Cubs were, I think, pretty clearly the best team. And with the addition of Kyle Tucker, they had kind of solidified that in my mind. And so far, that's been the case. They've been really, really good. They've had some of the most fun games to watch this year. Their series against the Diamondbacks had it was just an insane, back end of the game. It was low scoring to start with, and then they all just piled on runs. I think it finished 11-10. So they've been tons of fun. Carson Kelly has been, in limited playing time, one of the best catchers in all of baseball. He's hitting 360 with 7 home runs. Not a lot of plate appearances, but I would assume that he has the highest OPS. Yeah, he's hitting 1347 on the year. So he's been ridiculous in the limited amount of plate appearances that he's had. And they've just been super fun to watch. I like them a lot. And now you can talk about the Braves too.
Oh, I didn't have the Braves point.
Oh, that was me. My bad. But I mentioned at the start of the year they were having a slow start. And I said, don't overreact to teams who are starting off super hot. I think in that case it was the Angels. And don't do the same thing with teams that are starting off cold that you know are going to be good. In that case, it was the Braves. And since that point, they're still below 500. They're at 14-16 right now, I believe. But they've won 9 of their last 12 after that kind of rocky start to the season. So good teams are going to be good. That's just how it works out. Teams will have cold stretches. That's just how it is. And unfortunately for them, it was at the start of the year, but they're pulling it together down the stretch. And then say this every week at this point. Broken record. I sound like talking about Seattle's offensive line, talking about Aaron Judge and how good he is. But this is by far the AL MVP, by far the best player in the league, in my opinion. And one of the best offensive seasons ever, on par with just about anybody you can name. And then over his last 162 regular season games, he's hitting 369 and 494 with a 7.74 slugging percentage, a 249 WRC plus, 14.3 F/WAR, 64 home runs, and 163 RBIs. And now to put that into perspective, Barry Bonds' best WRC plus in the season was 244, and his highest F/WAR in a season was 12.7. So Aaron Judge is putting together a better of those two numbers over the past 162 games than Barry Bonds did ever in any season. I think people hate the Yankees so much, and I wanted to talk. It's the pot calling the kettle black here, but they hate the Yankees.
I was going to say that's how professional you are on this podcast.
Exactly.
You keep talking about how good the Yankees are. You
got to be objective sometimes. It's just he's been so ridiculous. It's kind of hard not to acknowledge. And I think people just like the Yankees so much that they choose to disregard it. But it's one of the best right-handed hitting seasons of all time, and he's one of the best right-handed hitting players ever. So that brings us to the other team in the American League East, which at the moment we're coming on a bit of a high. We're feeling a bit better after last night, but going into that game, it was not looking the best. But that game last night was pretty exciting. Did you end up watching that one?
I watched the Jays in 30 from that game. Mm-hmm. And very exciting game. I was going to say as well that they kind of needed a high. It's been a rough stretch here for the Blue Jays. They were down 6-0 yesterday to the Boston Red Sox. And we've been saying it now the last couple episodes, I think, that they need more power out of their top guys. They were able to get it yesterday. Santander hit the game-tying home run for the Blue Jays. Alejandro Kirk, they ended up intentionally walking a couple of guys ahead of him so that they could get him to the plate in the extra innings. He ends up hitting in the game-winning RBI for the Toronto Blue Jays. So that was good to see as well yesterday. But yeah.
I had totally tuned out of that game. I started watching it, and then they went down, and I was like, okay, I'll watch basketball instead. And I was just checking through the scores again, and I saw that it was tied. So I tuned back in. And, I mean, it was electric. Obviously, Varsho starting it all off. Kirk hitting another one, and then Santander tying it up at 6. They needed that moment, man, and especially out of the big signing of the offseason at Santander, and with Varsho coming back and immediately hitting a home run. It was all very exciting. But I think my favorite part of that game, because I watched it happen, was the tag up for the sac fly by Vlad, which set up the intentional walk, so it wasn't like it was all for nothing anyways. But like he put his every time he dives, he's diving with everything he's got in his body, man. He is laying out. He would I think he'd give up everything to get one extra base, and whether that's for better or for worse, it kind of depends on it's a coin flip. But in that case, I just put on the Jets and made it to third, and then ended up setting up for that game-winning RBI by Kirk. But like you said, outside of yesterday, it's been not the greatest for Toronto. The power just isn't there still for them. You expect them to turn around at some point, but that point has not come yet. Bo Bichette is maybe the most notable of that group in terms of guys that need to get the power together.
Hasn't hit a home run since May of last year.
I said that stat, and I corrected myself immediately because I thought I was wrong because it sounded so crazy. Obviously, he missed some time in that stretch. But yeah, May of 2024 was the last Bo Bichette home run. So obviously not great. He's among the worst in shortstops in ISO, which is just isolated power slugging minus batting percentage. They have the fourth worst team slugging in the entire league with a 347. And then the second worst team ISO. 200 is considered good if you're a power hitter. 140 is league average. The Toronto Blue Jays have a 110 ISO. So well below league average, second worst in the entire league, only in front of the Kansas City Royals. At some point, it has to turn around. It just has to. You have to expect it to. There's too many talented bats in that lineup for it not to, but it's just abysmal baseball to watch at this point. Hopefully, they can continue to kind of build on what they had last night, and we can maybe see a bit of a turnaround, but at the moment, it's pretty bleak for that offense in terms of power. Other than that, though, you mentioned Dalton Varsho returning. Did you see the catch
yesterday?
Yeah. It was it's probably not going to catch of the year, probably not going to make it. There's going to be something crazier. But in terms of just difficulty, falling down and losing the ball for, a second and a half, and then still turning around in time to make the catch while on one knee. I don't think it was a difficult play to begin with, getting the jump on the ball to the warning track, but then turning around, falling, and then spinning back around off one knee and catching it is just ridiculous. I think there is one outfielder in baseball that makes that play, and it is Dalton Varsho. I think you ask any outfielder in baseball to close their eyes for, 1.5 seconds as they're tracking the ball, they're probably going to miss it, let alone getting up off the ground and then turning back around to make the catch. So I have always been a Dalton Varsho fan. I've been a supporter of him since he's been traded, even through all the stupid debates about Moreno and Gurriel being better. He's just such an elite defender in center field that even if, the hitting never comes around, he's still going to be one of the most valuable players for this Toronto Blue Jays team. And I think that catch really showed it. But do we have anything else we want to talk about for the MLB?
Nope. So I think that does it for today's episode. Knights Game 6 starting real soon. Leafs are currently tied 0-0 in the first, and the Blue Jays are tied at 0-0 going into the bottom of the second against the Red Sox.
And Knicks and Pistons will be tipping off hopefully right away. It was supposed to start 3 minutes ago, so we'll be watching that one as well.
But we thank you for tuning in once again to the Armchair Athletes, and hope to see you once again next week for more playoff talk and Blue Jays talk, and who knows, maybe even Seahawks talk. Maybe they'll just trade for Patrick Mahomes or something. Who knows?
They might. We don't need that bum. We got Jalen Milroe and Sam Darnold. We're set for the future, man.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you, folks.